Star Wars is for everyone, and I don't know why we keep having to say that. It's so weird. Hi, my name is Crystal Kyber, like the Kyber crystals in Star Wars, and I'm an opportunist. I mean, Star Wars fan. Let's get into it. This is how today's video is gonna go. We are going to address something that was said by one of the biggest Star Wars content creators here on YouTube, and I'm gonna get ready and do my makeup at the same time. As always, I will have whatever products I'm using in the comments down below. Just as a little disclaimer, I'm not here to drag Star Wars theory or what he's doing or his content. That's not what this is about, but I do have critiques or opinions. The point of this video is to share my own personal experiences of what it's like to be a woman in a nerdy, male-dominant space. For some context, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, Star Wars Theory is working on a fan film, and he is using like an AI-generated CGI version of Luke Skywalker. Now, someone tagged Mark Hamill on Twitter and asked him if Star Wars Theory has his permission to use his likeness. Mark Hamill responded with no. Star Wars Theory went on YouTube. He ranted about Mark not being able to use his likeness and then talked about how upset he is, which is valid, you're allowed to be upset. And this somehow turned into him defending his honor as a fan about how in the 90s and early 2000s, it wasn't very cool to be a Star Wars fan. And it's not like nowadays how Disney owns Star Wars and we have all this new Disney Star Wars content, and now there's all these fake fans and you have all these e-girls being like, ooh, I'm a Star Wars fan. Well, no, they aren't. They're opportunists. They're not real fans. I don't know like where those lines got connected in his brain. I mean, obviously it was something that he had been thinking about for a while, or maybe he said it before. I don't know. The clip got posted onto Twitter and Twitter had a field day. I as well had a field day. I took the opportunity to have a field day, and there's a huge thread of women Star Wars content creators on my Twitter. I'll link it down below if you want to check it out. First things first. What is an opportunist? An opportunist is a person who exploits circumstances to gain immediate advantage rather than being guided by consistent principles or plans. Maybe being an opportunist is making money off of Star Wars, but off of hating Star Wars. Or maybe it's selling Star Wars merch. Maybe that's being an opportunist. I don't know, I'm just a girl. I'm just a girl who likes Star Wars. Is me making this video being an opportunist? Yeah, I would say so. I think I understand what he was saying. He feels like I mean, I can't speak for his intentions, so I'm not going to. That's not what I'm here to talk about. So there was something that he said that I did agree with. Shocker. I think Star Wars Theory and I are about the same age. He did say something about how in the 90s and early 2000s, it was not very cool to be a Star Wars fan. Because he's right, it was not very cool to be a Star Wars fan. Sometimes now I'm like, dude, it's not cool to be a Star Wars fan. I grew up on Star Wars. Star Wars has been a huge part of my life since I was a little kid. My dad is a huge sci-fi nerd. Actually, my very first crush was Luke Skywalker. I only remember this because my cousin was teasing me about it. Like, she kept asking me like who my crush was. I'm a little child. I don't know what it means to have a crush at this point. I remember telling her that I thought that Luke Skywalker was cute. I don't know, I'm a kid. And she made fun of me so hard because she was like, he's old now. And I don't think I understood because, you know, I'm watching Luke Skywalker on the screen. I don't understand that it was like, what, 20 years, 30 years before the 90s, 10 years, 20 years. But yeah, in my mind, like Luke Skywalker was cute. I didn't know that he was old. But by the way, Mark Hamill, still a babe. The very first Star Wars film that I saw in person was The Phantom Menace. I had to be like 8 years old, and I remember thinking that it was so cool and my dad being like, that was awful. Since The Phantom Menace came out, I've seen every Star Wars film since then in theaters with my little brother, by the way. It's kind of like our thing that we do together. We even recently watched Return of the Jedi in theater when it was like its 40th year anniversary. Even though Star Wars meant a lot to me personally, it wasn't very cool. Like, I remember telling people I was into Star Wars and them thinking that I was a nerd, which I was, But it was something that I really kept to myself for a really long time, especially being a woman who likes something that is very liked by men, specifically Star Wars. It gets very gatekeepy, which doesn't feel good. Like, you don't want to be questioned every time you say that you like something and then all of a sudden you're like bombarded with questions. And it's not in like a friendly way either. It's more of like in a prove it kind of way. So I kept that shit to myself. And then the sequels came out. It's no big secret, but I'm not the biggest fan of the sequels. It's just, they're not really like my favorite movies, but I watched all of them. I watched them in theaters with my brother. It didn't really make me excited about Star Wars, not the way that it had in the past, but maybe it wasn't for me anymore. Maybe I kind of like grew out of it. Everything changed when The Mandalorian came out. Now, I remember there being a lot of hype around The Mandalorian, and like I said, at this point, I was kind of like meh about Star Wars because I didn't really like the new movies that had come out, but I was interested enough. And of course, as some of you guys know, I am so obsessed with Baby Yoda. So The Mandalorian is really what sparked my love for Star Wars again. So at this point in time, I had not seen Clone Wars or any of the other animated TV shows. I actually did like a full series watch through where I started with The Phantom Menace and then I watched Attack of the Clones and then the Clone Wars TV show. And then once I started watching the Clone Wars, I was completely obsessed. I fell in love with Ahsoka, I fell in love with Rex, I fell in love with Asajj, I fell in love with Star Wars. I really don't know how it happened, but I like fell deep into the rabbit hole. After doing a complete Star Wars rewatch, my brother and I, we went to Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland. It was amazing. And it was like literally the day before California shut down. We went on like March 16th, 2020. And it was amazing. I almost cried all day being in Galaxy's Edge because it was just so overwhelming. And it was so amazing to just be like with my brother for one and being in this place that had meant so much to both of us growing up. It was honestly like such a special day. I think about it all the time. It is like so defining for me. And then the pandemic happened, so I had nothing else to do but think about Star Wars, read Star Wars, watch Star Wars. I was reading fanfics, I was reading books. I was in it. That's when I started to get involved with Star Wars Twitter, which I didn't know that was a thing. It was just so cool to find out that there was more fans out there who loved the same thing I did at the level that I do. But I remember I was like house sitting for my parents and I was watching the Clone Wars and I just had like this moment of like, oh my God, I need to talk about this with someone. And I think when my dad came home, I started talking about it with him. And I think at this point he was so over me talking about Star Wars, and he's a Star Wars fan. I should also mention that I did have a YouTube channel that I would post like makeup stuff on, and I would do a lot of vlogging on this channel. I really love vlogging and I kind of miss it. What I'm saying is that is when I got the great idea to start making Star Wars content because I needed an outlet. I'll admit when I first started my little YouTube journey and I did start watching like other Star Wars content creators, I did used to watch Star Wars Theory. Like, it's kind of impossible not to when you're watching Star Wars content because if it's not Star Wars Theory, it's Star Wars Explained. They're the two biggest ones in the space. I thought that his like content was good. I used to watch his live videos. It just started to get like a little bit misogynistic at some points. Sometimes I would be in the chat of like these live videos with Star Wars Theory and I was just like, dude, this is weird. I think it was around the time of the High Republic coming out and they had all the like non-binary and queer characters and women-led characters, and Star Wars Theory was not having it. And that's where I started to become like disillusioned with him and the type of like opinions that he held. I was like not okay with. They weren't for me. One of the points I wanted to talk about was, I don't know if I can talk while I do my eyeliner. My point being, I've never shared my Star Wars story with you here on my channel. I wanted you to hear it. I wanted us to be a little bit closer. My point is that a lot of people get into Star Wars at different times. If you like Star Wars, you're a Star Wars fan. If you get into Star Wars yesterday, Star Wars is for everyone, and I don't know why we keep having to say that. It's so weird. It is very unfair to call girls, women, opportunists for liking Star Wars or making content related to Star Wars. I know on one hand it's like, well, don't feed the trolls. I'm gonna talk about it. You can be any gender expression, any gender identity, any age, any whatever. to like Star Wars. And if you want to make content or talk about it online, like, do it. There are some amazing content creators out there that don't hate women and that are women, and femme presenting and non-binary. There's so many different corners of this fandom that you can enjoy. It doesn't have to be these toxic YouTubers who make money off of hating Star Wars, even if like that's not their actual opinion. Am I being an opportunist for talking about this situation, for making a video coming off the back of one of the biggest Star Wars YouTubers? Sure. What of it? Maybe this is opportunistic. I don't really care. I felt like I needed to stand up to this, and I felt the need to talk about it, to talk about this as a woman and talk about my own experience as a Star Wars fan. And something I find so beautiful about where the community is here now is there's so many of us. Like, why are you mad about that? It is so cool to be able to connect with people who also like Star Wars and that want to talk about it as much as I do and that have different opinions than I do. There's people that I met that just got into Star Wars like recently, and they're still fans. We still have things to talk about. They've seen the same content that I have. And I think that's so cool. Like, we all have different experiences and interests and things that we bring to the table. And it's like, why would we want to gatekeep that? If you just got into Star Wars during the Disney era and you started talking about it online, come sit at my table, please. We can just be opportunists together. I took the opportunity to make this video to talk about something that was important to me and to connect with other people that might feel the same or not, and to open up a dialogue about it. And I think what Star Wars Theory said was very irresponsible, and I think that he should be held accountable for it at the end of the day. If you want to share your thoughts and your opinions with me about this video, about this topic, about my makeup, please do. I hope that you have an amazing rest of your day, and may the Force be with you. Bye.